Hey guys, welcome to one more episode of MetaCast, the podcast of the Meta-Analyses Academy. And I am honored today to welcome to the stage Maria from São Paulo, Brazil. She's going to talk to us all about her experience in business, her research fellow here in Boston, career opportunities. And that's what we're all about. That's what MetaCast is about. It's about successful careers. And for her level of training, Maria has done extraordinarily well. So I'm so honored to have you and welcome to the stage here in MetaCast, Maria. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson. It's such an honor to be here. I have no words to describe what a privilege it is to be here with you guys. I'm so happy to be able to share a little bit of my story. And let's definitely dive into this.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself a little bit and share your background. Before I do that, just a disclaimer. MetaCast and the Meta-Analyses Academy are not affiliated with the institutions where I currently work, where Maria is doing her training as well. The opinions here are exclusively ours. I also want to state that the Meta-Analyses Academy is a training program that teaches systematic reviews and meta-analysis. We teach methods, statistics, and writing. We're not responsible for the publications of our students, and also we do not do publications for our students. But if you want to learn at the highest level how to write systematic reviews and meta-analysis and advance your career, I invite you to join our wait list. So having said that, Maria, would you mind starting off by introducing yourself, giving a little bit of your background, if you don't mind?
Totally. So, hey everyone, once again, my name is Maria. Everybody in Brazil calls me Malu, but here in the US, they have difficulties pronouncing it, so I go by Maria here. I'm a medical student in Brazil. I study in São Paulo, Santa Casa de São Paulo Medical School there. In Brazil, we have 6 years of medical school. I just finished the 4th, and then I came here to the US to do a year of research fellow, and then I'm going to go back next year to finish medical school, the last years of medical school. I've been working at MGH with neurology specifically. I work in the rare neurological diseases field. I work with clinical research, with bench research, a bunch of all of those things together. And I also love the business part of medicine. I'm working a little bit with industry as well. And it's been such an incredible experience to be here.
Just amazing. You're a research fellow at the Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School. Let's start there. How long have you been in this position as a research fellow?
So I arrived here in Boston in February, end of January / February. This is a year of internship that I'm doing throughout medical school. It was such a miracle that I got to be in this position. So many people ask me, how did you get this position? How did that just come into existence? And I always say to people that it was such a blessing. Literally, it was such a blessing from the heart of God in my life. And I want to share with you guys a little bit of that story and how that just came into place. Everything just fell into place. So ever since the beginning of medical school, I had a super great passion for neurology. I remember that one time I think I was about 10 or 11 years old. I just got home, and my dad was watching a TED Talk on stroke. And there was this woman, she was walking around the stage, and she was basically carrying a brain, literally. She was carrying like an actual brain. And I saw that, I was like, wow, that is absolutely fascinating. She was basically describing the pathways that we have to understand to know what stroke really is and everything. And by that moment on, from that moment on, I knew that I had to study the brain. And throughout medical school, I also had the understanding that genetics was such an important thing in my life. I loved the molecular biology pathways. I loved to study that and everything. And then I also started to get involved a little bit with business in the beginning of medical school. I can talk about that in more detail afterwards. But I had all of those things burning in my heart, and I didn't actually know how to bring all of those things together. And then when people ask me, how did you get into that position? How did that come into existence? I just tell people that it all came through something that we call revelation. And for those of you that might have never heard this word before, revelation is basically an understanding that you have that was previously subjective or even subconscious. And that becomes concrete or objective at a certain point in time. And revelation is something that brings propulsion in your life towards a specific direction. I know this still sounds a little bit subjective, so I'm gonna give you guys a story so you guys can understand what I'm talking about. So if you guys look, I don't know if you guys know the story of Esther in the Bible. It's such an incredible story, and it just represents my life so well. So I have to tell you the story.
Go for it.
So basically, Esther was this queen, and she had a lot of influence in her hands, on her hands, and she didn't know what to do with that. She was basically chilling on her, and she was a Jewish person, but she used to hide her nationality, right? And then there was a specific point in time that the Jewish people were literally about to be killed. The whole people were about to be killed. And she wasn't doing anything. She didn't even know. She was kind of blinded to the circumstance that was happening, right? And then there is a specific point in time and that her uncle just comes into the story. And he brings to her an understanding that she had something on her hands that could literally save the Jewish people. But she didn't know that. And then what happens is, by that moment, on that moment specifically, she has a realization of what she had on her hands. And she just understands that she has to position herself. She literally says, if I perish in this situation, I perish. She didn't even care specifically about her life at that moment. It was a cause, it was a calling above her life, right? And then what happens is she basically calls a fast and all the Jewish people, like for all the Jewish people, and she decides that she's going to try to talk to the king at that moment, because trying to talk to the king was exactly the thing that would be able to keep him from making the decision of exterminating the Jewish people, right? And then what happens in that moment is that we have to know that at that point in time, at that in that season, women were not even allowed to get close to kings if they were not summoned before. So that was literally a risky situation. She could die. That was the thing. She could die, literally. And then she proclaims this fast. 3 days, all the Jewish people didn't eat anything, didn't drink anything. And she just positions herself towards the king, literally thinking that she could die. And what happens is she saves the Jewish people. She saves the entire Jewish people. Nobody dies, right? And she becomes known as one of the greatest heroes of the faith in the Bible. And so why am I saying that? Because there were so many things on her hand, and she didn't know that. She was kind of blinded to her situation. And that moment that she has the realization, it is like scales fell from her eyes, right? And so that is the best way to describe what happened in my life. I was not looking for all of those different options of fellowships, of doctors. Let me look into all of into the entire neurology field. I'm not saying that that is not important, but I was not specifically looking at that in that much of a detail, right? There was a specific point in time in which I had this realization, and everything just fell into place in my mind and in my spirit. And I knew the exact person that I had to contact with. I didn't even contact different labs or different PIs or different hospitals. I was a second-year medical student. I think I was like 20 years old. I didn't even have my credentials sealed, honestly. And then, obviously, I wrote the professional email. I had my CV there. I had a letter of recommendation from my PI back in Brazil. And then some people could just argue. They could argue like it was the professionalism of the email. You just wrote a super incredible email. That's why you got the spot. But the reason why I say that that was not the case is because you see so many people doing that, and the results are not always the same. So what I say is that upon that email that I sent, when I sent that email, that PI just replied me in 10 minutes,
Wow.
inviting me for an interview. She gave me the spot as a second-year medical student, super young. Here in the U.S., we were considered undergraduates at that point.
Right.
And I normally say that that only happened because there was a window that had already been opened beforehand. And that window is what we call grace, which the Bible defines as unmerited favor. And this is what a calling is. A calling is not a purpose. So many people talk about purpose, right? And everybody's seeking purpose right now in society, specifically our generation. What is my purpose? What is my purpose and everything? And I normally say to people that you should not be seeking your individual purpose, but you should be seeking calling. And I say that because purpose, it basically generates motivation only. Calling generates propulsion. It propels you towards something that you cannot even contain on the inside of you. That is the exact difference. And why is there so much confusion in people's heads, specifically youth generation heads and minds today? This happens because people know that purpose is about something bigger than themselves. They are trying to look for something bigger than themselves, looking at themselves. What is my impact? What are my objectives? What am I supposed to do? So it's a question of you're trying to look at something beyond you in a self-centered perspective.
It's like in a selfish way.
Exactly. So it doesn't work that way. So that's why I say revelation comes from seeking calling. And how do we find our calling? We have to know who called us. And there's just one person that calls us to do the things that we are doing on earth. The Bible also says that if we draw near to God, he draws near to us.
Yeah.
So that is the differential in my story, to be really honest. That is the reason why I'm here.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful story. And I also want to take the opportunity that you brought this up and you mentioned is that, my own career, all the amazing things that happen, I've seen the hand of God, blessing me throughout all the different steps. Specifically when I had to make this very difficult decision of coming to the United States or not. As you know, it's very hard for all of us. I was just talking to Antonio, who was here, a great friend, one of the students of the Meta-Analysis Academy, and he was talking about the struggles of making this decision of going away from home to look for better training, to advance our careers. And I also sought the guidance of God, and I heard this word from God that said that, like he told Joshua when he was about to cross the Jordan River, and said that if you keep my commandments, if you do well, if you follow follow my instructions, and if you don't set your heart apart from my commandments, I'm going to bless you. And it's been 12 years that I'm here, and I've seen this word of fulfill in my life many, many times. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it also gives me an opportunity to share, how God has done amazing things in my own life. And Maria, how's the research fellowship going so far? How long have you been here, and what it's been like? How have people been receptive to you, and what has it been like being in Boston for this research fellowship thus far?
So as I told you, I arrived here in February.
Yeah, so almost 6 months at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So
more than 6 months.
More than 6 months.
Yeah.
Almost 10 right now. There's two and a half more left. It's almost over, sadly. But it's been an incredible experience. It definitely went beyond all of my expectations. The fact that I came here as a student, this is also something that I like to mention to people that talk about that and everything. When you come here as a student, you are basically faced by people in a different way. The community of doctors and the professors and all of those people, they want to invest in you. So there's also a window open when you come here as a student. So as I'm connected to Harvard as a student, I have access to so many different courses, to so many different lectures, and even to events that have changed the perspective that I have on medicine and have solidified the things that I need to do here, all of the steps that I have to take in my career. So that is one thing that I noticed here, coming here as a student, just gave me an opportunity to kind of like infiltrate myself into the system in a more strategic manner. So I'm able to participate in clinical discussions, for instance. I'm not working specifically in clinical rotations or at the hospital. I'm working in the lab at MGH, but I can participate in clinical discussions. And the way that, so I participate in every Wednesday, we have an MRI discussion for the child neurology residents and everything. And I had the opportunity to just participate in those discussions for the last couple of weeks. And the way that the doctors and even the chiefs, they intentionally want to see me growing medically and academically speaking, open up the stage even for my questions to come up and to even show me all of the things that are important to be noticed in the clinical cases. This is definitely something that has advanced my medical acumen in a way that I could have never seen before.
Yeah, you just mentioned a really critical point that I see in the U.S. training system. In the mentors that we have, whether it's in research in your case or even clinical, like they have a really strong interest in your personal development. Like you mentioned, they'll go out of their way to make sure that you're learning something. I think there's overall a sense of great pride in seeing the trainees do very well and advance their career. And of course, worldwide, this could also be true for individual mentors. But on average, let's put it that way, the U.S. training system is much more favorable for trainees and career development. In other countries, and by other countries I mean essentially Brazil, where I come from, it's not rare that you would find circumstances where the people at the top will sort of try to prevent the people who are under them from growing up, for maybe out of fear of competition or other reasons. And of course, I'm not generalizing. I'm not saying that that's true for everyone, but it is not rare. And I've heard many stories of people in Brazil where, the leadership of residency programs, of research programs will sort of like try to make it harder for people to climb the ladder. Yeah. Whereas over here in the U.S., I've had nothing but, people trying to push me up, even to places where I didn't think I was capable of going, people are like, you go, man, you go. So it's been a wonderful experience to train in the U.S., whether it's research or clinically.
Uh-huh.
Good. And what is it that you actually do, like on a day-to-day basis? There's a lot of people from Brazil, from in India, Pakistan, all over the world. They'd be curious, as a research position. I mentioned research fellow before, although technically, because you haven't graduated medical school, I don't know that we could call it that. But it's an amazing research position at a prestigious university here. So what has it been like, and what do you do on a daily basis or weekly basis?
As I told you in the beginning, I'm working with both the bench side and the clinical side.
That's amazing.
It's been an incredible opportunity. I could have never orchestrated that in my mind. So I work with rare diseases. The disease that I'm working with is specifically adrenoleukodystrophy, which is a fatal disease. It's a neglected disease, we could say. There are not many centers around the world that study the disease. And so there has been so many advancements in the disease, but not enough for us to support the patients enough, There's something that happens in the disease, which is the specific point that I work with, which is we don't know why that happens or when that happens specifically. We have some clues and some hypotheses from our previous research, but basically there's a point in time that some patients convert from adrenoleukodystrophy to cerebral adrenoleukodystrophy. I don't know if you guys know, there's a movie that portrays this disease that's called Lorenzo's Oil. It's a super famous movie. The movie's about that disease. The kid has the disease in the movie. So when that conversion happens from adrenoleukodystrophy to cerebral adrenoleukodystrophy, patients, their life expectancy is from 3 to 5 years. And they are kids. It's super frustrating. The disease affects family really deeply. It's very hard. And so we know that that conversion happens because of a disruption / dysfunction in the blood-brain barrier, which is basically the barrier that separates our brain from the other parts of our organism, right? And so what I'm doing at the bench specifically is we are studying what are the signaling pathways, what are the specific signaling pathways that determine the dysfunction in the blood-brain barrier. And in the clinical side, what we are doing and what I'm doing is with the team, obviously, we are analyzing, we are investigating biomarkers in plasma and also imaging. And I'm working with MRI and plasma markers as biomarkers for this disease that's called cerebroadrenal leukodystrophy. Because, as I told you, the fact that the disease has not been that studied as other diseases, what happens is currently the diagnosis of cerebroadrenal leukodystrophy is done through MRI, which means that you have to see a lesion in the MRI for you to diagnose a disease. And that opens up the space for you to miss the optimal therapeutic window. Because if you see the disease and if it's advanced enough, you may not be eligible for the current approved treatments that we have through FDA. And so if we find if we're able to find biomarkers in plasma, which is a super easy way, you could just draw blood from patients.
Would be amazing.
Yeah. And then you're able to predict brain lesion development. And then you can even put that, as we study that in academia, you're able to put that in the clinic and improve the life expectancy of patients, even prevent cerebroadrenal leukodystrophy from developing. So that's why the business part is also something that I love, because it's so important. Like I'm working with something that has to be converted or translated into the clinic. So we have to know how to convert everything that we are discovering at the bench and in the clinical side as well to the patient specifically.
Bench to bedside.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's a general overview of what I'm doing.
That's really cool. And you mentioned the business side of medicine a couple of times. You mentioned the science, of course, of getting ideas from basic lab and then taking it to clinical practice, but then implementing these and running a business around this discovery is also something that's fascinating. And a lot of people may be interested in that as a career. And I know you have a lot of different experiences in the business side of medicine, even as a medical student right now. Can you share some of those experiences, please?
Yeah, of course. So my first involvement with business was in the first year of medical school. This is even a funny story, because I got into medical school in 2020 when literally the pandemic hit. And so we had 2 weeks of in-person classes, and then everything closed down. And then I was going through medical school online, remotely for a few months, and I just immersed myself in the internet and different possibilities and everything. And I found this startup that's called HackMed. They're not a startup anymore, but they changed the trajectory of the healthcare field in Brazil, specifically for students. And I'm going to tell you guys what they did a little bit. So basically, HackMed was a startup that was working with, basically their mission was to invest in people, not only students, but people in the healthcare field that didn't know anything about business or entrepreneurship. Their mission was to educate those people in how to bring companies, how to bring ideas or gaps that you notice at the hospitals or in academia and everything, how you can translate those things into startups.
Yeah.
Us, like when we are working as doctors or as students, in our interaction with patients, we always see gaps in the market, right? So for instance, medical adherence. This is such an important issue. So many patients have difficulties in adhering to medications and everything. So that is a gap that we have in the clinic. We have so many startups that just came into existence out of that gap. So basically, the idea of HackMed was to teach people how to translate those gaps into actual solutions. And then I was going through that course, and they had a specific course to teach that to students and people that were interested. It was a practical course, so we were not just listening to classes or learning from people. We were actively building a company. We didn't know if that company was going to convert into an actual business, but we were doing that. And so I gathered a team. There was a specific problem in the healthcare field in Brazil, which was burning in my heart. I was super, that was something that was difficult for me to see, honestly. It was painful to see, which is the lines, right? In the public healthcare system in Brazil, in SUS. So we know that so many people, specifically for elective procedures, they wait. So some people,
Yeah, I remember cholecystectomies where I trained in Goiânia in Brazil. Like you would have to wait forever to get an elective cholecystectomy.
Exactly. So many people even die waiting.
Wow.
So we saw that as a gap. And then we gathered a team. I was leading that team. And we came up with a software that would optimize contract management in the public healthcare hospitals in Brazil, specifically the Santas Casas, which is a system in Brazil. Because we got to know that contract management once was something that was a bottleneck in the line formation. And so what we did was come up with the project or the projection of that software, and we would start selling that software for the hospitals. And so when I saw the kind of impact that business would have in our careers, in the life of patients and people overall in the healthcare field, I was absolutely fascinated. And I knew that that was something that I had to do for life. And so that was my first experience. The company didn't come. We didn't actually start a business. I had to come, it was the transition between finishing medical school and coming to the U.S. I was also taking step 1, which is one of the tests to get into residency in the U.S. and everything. It was, so many things were on my plate, and I had to make a decision according to the priorities at that moment. But it was an experience that changed my life, and I knew that I had I knew that I had that in my veins, the business, the desire to be in business. And
what are the most important skill sets that you see? I mean, you have some experience, you have others too, I'm sure you will share. But just on that note, and working on this company or on this product, what are some of the most important skill sets that you think are needed for people to succeed in the business of medicine from your experience so far?
So I think the first thing is actually care about your patients and be interested enough to widen or broaden the impact that you could generate in the clinic. It's something that so many people think that you need so many different business skills to start a business, but it's not actually that. I was the person leading the company. I was a student. I didn't have all of the necessary credentials. Obviously, we needed, so we were working with doctors. We had engineers in the company, which literally became a family to me. But the skills are just like medicine. You literally sit, study.
Learn, right?
Yeah, you interact with people that are currently working with companies and everything, and you make that happen. I would say the most important thing is to actually be interested to make an impact that can be broadened into the Brazilian healthcare system and all over the world.
I think you need to have just a degree of passion that like you can't stop thinking about that problem.
Yes,
like you just go to sleep, you think about it, wake up, you think about it. I think that level of passion, from what I hear, and in my own experience, in doing this I guess you could call it an education a platform. The Meta-Analysis Academy has just been that, I'm so passionate. I think people do need to be passionate about the problem that they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And then you had other experiences too. I mean, beyond HackMed, which was the first initiative, but you've done other projects over time too, correct, in business?
So when I finished that, the other experience that I started to have here, so I think the second most interesting thing that happened throughout my career was an association that we were able to do in my undergraduate research program, or scientific initiation, how some people call it in Brazil. Through my project, my first research project that I had, I was able to pioneer a partnership between business and academia. So that had never happened in the university, specifically in this context of scientific initiation.
Yeah.
Basically what we did, I was working at the bench as well. I was working with COVID, and we developed an artificial lung. We even published that. You guys can look that up. Just put my name in PubMed. It's a super interesting paper. So we developed an artificial lung with a startup that had a super innovative 3D model for specific tissues in the body. So they had it for lungs, they had it for heart, and some other tissues as well. Their name is Tissue Labs. They also have changed. So Gabriel, which is the CEO of the company, he's such an excellent, impressive, amazing person that also changed my life. His mentoring, the way that he helped us was such, it was amazing. You guys have to look Tissue Labs up because they are expanding right now, and they have so many new spots that have just opened. So look that up if you're interested in that. But yeah, we developed that partnership and we created that artificial lung with them. And we even had some funding coming throughout this interaction between our lab and the company. So that propelled our research in the university and science in the context of our university. And that was such an honorable thing to see, because after that, so that was the beginning. So those were the first business steps that our group back in Brazil took. And literally 1 week ago, I got the news. My PI back in Brazil just texted me, and she told me that they just won a competition in one of the main innovation hubs in Brazil, in HC, which is one of the main public healthcare hospitals in Brazil. They won the competition with the proposal of a company, a gene therapy company. So they really ingrained that. That entrepreneurship mindset got instilled into the lab, and it's generated so much value, and it's been amazing to see that happen. So yeah, I think that was. Yeah.
That's just incredible that at this phase in your career, you have so much already experience, of course, in the clinical part of medicine as you go through your training, but then also in the research, in clinical research, in basic research, and in business with all these experiences. It's so unique. What comes next in your career, Maria? I mean, you're going to have so many opportunities. You could finish med school and go into business and be hired by a company. You could create a company. You could do research. You could do a phenomenal residency with all those experiences. What do you want to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's hard. It's even a hard question because this summer I had the opportunity also to be selected to a mini MBA at Harvard.
Wow.
It was amazing. I was able to immerse myself a little bit in what an MBA actually is, and I was so fascinated. I went back to the lab. I was talking to my PI. I was like, "Fatty, I think I want to do an MBA and everything." So it was something that shaked the ground that I had. But medicine is the central part of my calling, and I am super passionate about patients and about the clinic itself. So I want to apply to residency as a priority. I want to go to child neurology residency. That is for sure. I was even looking at the program specifically today.
Nice.
Doing my research and everything. I definitely want to continue working with research in the rare neurological disease field. I really see myself in the genetics field, the rare disease field, continue working with this possible translation between what is being generated in academia, translating that to the market through patents, through even companies, the pharma industry. So I see myself in that intersection, even in residency, but definitely residency is something that I will be applying for and I will be doing. So, yeah.
Good. Yeah, I want to take this opportunity to give some general advice for people who are really passionate about, whether it's research, whether it's business like you. And at least in the United States, I can't speak so much about Brazil and other places, but in the United States, if let's say you want to do a research career, it is really important, I think, to still go through residency. And
Yes.
if you're gonna do a research career and you've done the clinical training in, for example, neurology or child neurology, it gives you more authority in that space when you do the research, when you apply for the grants. Your salary even will be higher. So people tend to do well or better if they go through residency. Of course, especially if you're thinking about business, that comes at a cost because you're spending a few years of your life getting clinical training, working very long hours, whereas you could potentially be getting other skills that may be super valuable in the marketplace for a business career too, like doing an MBA and other things. So it's all balanced. Everyone, of course, has to look at their own individual situations and figure out what's best for them. But at least in terms of a research career, like I was talking to Antonio just now, who considers doing that as a career, I think doing residency and then going and then shifting towards a predominantly research career, I think makes a lot of sense. So I'm glad you're taking this way. I think it's a fantastic option, and you can always become a clinician scientist or go into business later on.
Yeah. And something that it's interesting about that is we used to talk a lot about that back in HackMed, which is even for business, the internal perspective of medicine and like in the clinic that you're able to get when you go through residency, it not only gives you authority, but it broadens your vision as well to be able to even make your impact in a more strategic way. There's something that we always used to say back there, which is it's so much easier to teach business to a doctor than teach medicine to a businessman. Obviously, you need all of those, you need the interdisciplinary team, you need people from different backgrounds. But if you have the medical acumen and then you're able to integrate that with your business knowledge, that gives you an opportunity to internalize yourself in the system in a more strategic way, I would say.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point. I love that. Yeah. Now, I want you, if you don't mind, to give some general advice for people who are interested in learning more and more about business. So, for example, you've had this many experiences in HackMed and then now the mini MBA. What sort of opportunities would be available for someone who is in Brazil and inspired by your story, or someone who is in India and Pakistan and wants to sort of go into this career, whether it's a research-oriented career, doing a year of research like you're doing, or a business development?
that is a really good question.
Because that's the challenge, is to translate like individual experiences to advice that may be applicable to our listeners.
There are, I would say, two main steps that are super important. The first one is role models. It's super important that we study the story of people that know or that went through translation of drugs, for example, study the story of companies, study the story of labs, people that have done that, and how did they do that. Go into detail like an FBI person. You're trying to look at that person's story and company story and everything. So that's the first thing that I would say is essential. And then from that, you're going to be able to have more directed steps towards how you can educate yourself into that field. Because the business field is also super wide. There's so many different paths that you can take. So in industry, for instance, is super huge as well. You can go into the investment field. You can go to venture capital. You can try to you can work in the industry as a researcher. So there are so many different options. So I would say study different people that know that have done that excellently. And then from that, you start to learn the different paths, and then look for potential courses, always in-person courses. If you're able to come to those centers, the in-person experience is unique. So being here in Harvard, for instance, it definitely changed the way that I saw this. I would be studying this for 5 years, and now I have a vision and a perspective of what I'm living in just a couple of months. So if you can come, there's so many different options. You can even get scholarships to come. That was my case, for instance. You can get scholarships to fund you for different programs that you want to get. And I would say always try to be intentional with your decisions. Don't come to Harvard with a super broad perspective. Like, I want to go to Harvard. So many people just use Harvard as a brand, you know? I just want to go to Harvard and then tell people that I came to Harvard. If you're not super intentional here, you're not going to be able to extract the fullness of what you can when you're here.
Yeah.
So
totally.
I'd say that.
And that's amazing. That's great advice. And then you mentioned this topic. We're running out of time, sadly, because there's so many great advice and opportunities that you could share with people. But I do want you to comment for the final minute, Maria, on the scholarship opportunity that you had, because I know specifically for folks in Brazil, which are a large part of our audience, this is an amazing opportunity. So tell us about the grant, the scholarship that you got, financial aid, so that you could come and do this opportunity here in Boston.
Yeah, of course. So I got a scholarship to spend the year here through Fundação Estudar, which is connected, they're not a branch, but they're connected to Fundação Lehman or Lehman Foundation, for those of you who speak English. I also just really want to honor them. They were the ones that made it possible for me to be here. So basically, they have a program that's called Líderes Estudar. In English, that would be study leaders. They select a few people that they consider that have academic excellence and potential to lead. They not only fund those people, but they invest in those people intellectually. So there are so many different courses, and like leadership courses in different fields all over the different sectors in Brazil. And you get to get in contact with the greatest leaderships in Brazil, the greatest companies in Brazil, even companies that are here. Just for you to get a sense of what I'm saying, I don't know if you guys know, there's a company, it's a financial company, super famous company, that's doing super well, that's called Brex. It's an American company that was founded by Brazilians, and both these two Brazilians, they met at the program, at Líderes Estudar.
Wow.
So it's such a transformative experience to be there. It just accelerates something that would happen in 10 years in your life. You just go through that in 1 year. So it's incredible. Definitely take a look at that opportunity, because they are super willing to propel the youth generation to make an impact in Brazil specifically. They have a connection with Brazil.
And of course, there will be, we hope, other opportunities in other countries as well. But I did want Maria to mention about this great opportunity from Fundação Lehman, from the Estudar, and also one other that comes to mind is the Emilia Foundation, Maria Emilia, I think, Foundation, which is another great opportunity. So there are these circumstances in Brazil, and I'm sure other opportunities around the world. So Maria, with that, I want to thank you so much for participating here in MetaCast. Your story is such an inspiration. You know, can clearly see the blessings of God on you and in your career. And I'm honored to have you here at MetaCast and sharing your experience with everyone else. And I'm excited for the future chapters in your career.
I am too, super excited. Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you all for listening. It's super special to be here because I have such a big admiration for you, Dr. Henderson. And I see this podcast just transforming the reality of healthcare all over the world, specifically in Brazil, but all over the world, because it's changing. Everything comes from our minds, right? The Bible also says in Romans 12:2 that we have to be, our minds have to be constantly renewed according to the perfect, pleasing, and good will of the Father. So may our minds be constantly renewed by everything that is being said here, for us to just be sent and transform the world.
Fantastic. On that note, God bless you. Thank you for participating.
Amen.
If you guys want to hear other inspirational stories, make sure to check out the other episodes of MetaCast, the podcast of the Meta-Analysis Academy, and join our wait list to participate in future training programs on where you can learn how to do research that will help you advance your career, ultimately potentially even land great positions like research fellowships and others. Maria, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.